This is the third video in my Stormlight Archive recap, starting with The Way of Kings, and now we're going to jump into part 1 in Shallan's POV. So we meet Shallan, who is a young, light eyes woman from a family that is on the brink of disaster. Or honestly, the disaster's already happened, and we're just waiting for the explosion to occur. Apparently, her mother passed away, in before, and their father recently passed, but only she and her brothers are keen to this knowledge. They're trying to keep it on the down low because there are, creditors and debtors out for them for the money that their father owes. And they're going to be in hot water if they can't come up with these funds. And so they're sending, letters that are like forged to be him, basically trying to buy some time while they try and hatch a plan to get out of this. And what they come up with is pretty crazy. So we learn about this plan over the course of part 1, and it's mainly unveiled at the end, but for the sake of keeping these succinct, I'll just start with it. That it turns out the way the dad was making money was by selling ore deposits. I forget exactly what ore, but some mineral deposit, and the quarries were starting to dry up. So what he did was he used a device called a fabrial, which is like a device that goes over your hand and it can transform one material into another. Now, certain fabrials are more powerful than others, and it also depends on the wielder. But what he was doing was transforming, presumably just like regular stone, into ore. And he was spacing out these fabrications so that it seemed, like a natural discovery. So now the father is gone, and they tried to recreate what he did, but the fabrial that he used is broken. So the plan that Shallan comes up with is essentially to get close to someone who has a working one and swap it out with the one that they have, the broken one, so that this person, obviously they're going to figure it out, but hopefully, late enough to where she can escape. Now, the wildest part of this is that the target that she has her sights set on is Yasna Kholin, who is the sister to Dalinar, the current king of the Alethi people, Gavilar's brother. And Yasna is known as being a very brilliant, very smart woman who wields one of these fabrials. She's also a heretic, apparently. But basically, Shallan petitioned her to, be an apprentice underneath her. And Yasna seemingly, allowed her to petition her to do this. But Shallan's been trying to catch up with her for the past like 6 months. She's basically just like, oh yeah, I'm over here. And then Shallan shows up and she's already moved on. So Yasna's not making this easy for her. And it turns out that's a bit of, that's a page from Yasna's playbook to see like how much does this person really care, because Shallan is not the only person petitioning her for this role. Now we get to know Shallan's personality a bit while she's doing her travels to catch up with Yasna. She spends a lot of time on a ship of pirates, essentially, tracking behind Yasna, and they're a really nice crew. They are a bit of a body crew as you would expect from pirates, but Shallan is not a delicate flower. She grew up with all brothers, first of all, and she also just likes to be witty and crack jokes. So she gets along well with them. And we also learn that she is an incredible artist. She has basically like a photographic memory where she can look at something, blink her eyes with intention, and then she can bring that like back to life on the page at a later time. So she's always walking around with this big ass sketchbook that she uses to draw people, but also, study like plants and animals and whatnot. So she does end up catching up to Yasna. And she even sees Yasna use the Fabrial in real time. So we know that it works for sure. But this doesn't go down exactly how Shallan expected. She's basically like, I'm here, I'm ready to start. And Yasna's like, hold up. I said you could apply. I didn't say you got the job. And she then grills Shallan on all her knowledge of pretty much everything you would study in school. What's your history, your mathematics, your science? And, Shallan is self taught, like 100%. So she does well for someone self taught, but she's not going to impress someone who's a genius. And, Shallan's crowning, jewel is her ability to do the arts. And Yasna's not very impressed with that. She thinks the arts are just some frivolous, like, waste of time, essentially. So she tells Shallan, she respects the hustle of her keeping up with her and wanting to petition. Yasna thinks she's doing this because she has heard of her family's, position, and thinks that, Shallan's basically wanting to use Yasna to be in better social standing to secure like a better wedding match. And obviously Shallan lets her believe that. But Yasna just says, she gives her like a rain check, like, brush up on your skills, come back to me when you're ready, and we can try this again. And Shallan, bows her head and walks away, but she can't give up. Like, she goes and talks back to the sailor, and he's like, you gotta try 3 times. It's always the third time that works out. And Shallan really doesn't have any extra time to mess around with. So she needs to come up with something. So she ends up going back into town and getting, books on these subjects that she needs to brush up on. There's this funny moment where she's about to get absolutely destroyed with this deal on these books, like 10 emerald bromes, which is like emerald brooms or whatever, are like their biggest money denomination. And then the pirate guy runs into the shop. He's like, oh, Mrs. Like, he'll give you a better deal, like, at the other shop. He's like, please come back, please buy. And so they do kind of this like swindle. I guess it's a reverse swindle because she was about to get robbed, to get a better deal on these books. And she ends up getting them for like 2 emerald broms. But she takes her books and she goes back to the library where she first met with Yasna, and she's just gonna try and cram. Now, while she's doing her cramming, or I might have this slightly out of order where she met with Yasna and then also meets her in this library, and then she like goes and comes back. But anyway, whatever. She meets an ardent named, it's like Cabalt or something like that is his name. And he, for an ardent who's basically supposed to be like a priest like figure, he's got jokes. He's almost kind of charming, and he is, telling her he wants to petition Yasna to, like, make her stop being a heretic. I'm only mentioning him because he will come up later. But yeah, he leaves her with a note for Yasna, and then what Shallan ends up doing is she tries to appeal to Yasna's, like, logical tendencies. So she writes her up a letter essentially saying, like, yeah, I'm not very studied, but wouldn't you want someone who is, of their own volition, putting in all this work and wanting to better themselves? Isn't that worth something more than just some like rich person who's had everything handed to them and had tutors, paid for, and they've just memorized a bunch of shit? So this letter does appeal to Yasna, and so does the stack of books that Shallan had collected. That really shows, she was listening to Yasna, what her knowledge gaps were. She also sees Shallan's sketchbook, and within it, you can tell that Shallan's not just drawing just for the fun of it. Like, that's part of it, but she also has these diagrams of like animals and plants, and it just shows that she has a scholarly mind. And it's really that ends up winning over Yasna, and she does extend this position to Shallan. Now, this is the part of the book where it's revealed that now the real work begins for Shallan, the real work of trying to steal this fabrial and save her family. It's a ballsy plan, that's for sure, and we'll see how it's going to pay off for her.